All right, so now we're going to continue on with Buddhist ethics, and we're going to talk about the Noble Eightfold Path. So if you remember back to our discussion of doctrine, when we went through the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha mentions the Noble Eightfold Path in that fourth Noble Truth, which is that we can overcome our attachment by following the Noble Eightfold Path. So this is where we're going to talk about that path and what each step on the path refers to. You'll notice, though, that it's not necessarily, a path where it's like, oh, okay, step one, check that off, step two, check that off. The path, of course, is seen as something that we strive to move down. We strive to work as hard as we can on each of the steps, but they are difficult, and that's why it takes many, many lifetimes to accomplish every step on the path. So we're going to go through each one of them and talk a little bit about what it means. So the first one is right view. So to embark upon the Buddhist path, you have to have the right view. And really what this refers to is, you could say, an adoption of the Buddhist worldview, right? You have to understand that life is suffering. You have to accept that life is suffering before you can start working on how to overcome that suffering. So you have to accept this sort of core understanding of the world in which we live in order to see that there is something that needs to be changed, right? As long as you live in the reality where life is wonderful and life is great, then of course you're not ready to embark on this path. This is not a path that interests you. So the idea here is that you have to see that there's a problem, and you have to understand that problem in the same way that Buddhists do before you can start to work to overcome it, right? So until I see the problem in my life as suffering, then I'm not ready to start working on how to get rid of it. So I have to start on my path by accepting that life is suffering, right? Accepting that there is suffering in my life and that I would like to overcome it, and then I'm ready to embark upon this path. The second step is right intention, and really this refers to sort of that next step in the process that I was just talking about, which is that I have to want to overcome my suffering, right? I need to accept that my life is suffering and that there's something I can do about that, right? I want to overcome that. I want to rid my life of suffering. I want to experience greater joy and greater bliss. So I have to have an intention of doing that. Right? I have to want to do that and be ready to work in order to overcome my suffering. So I've accepted sort of the Buddhist worldview about suffering, and I've accepted that there's something I can do about it, and I want to change that. I want to change things in my life. The third one is right speech. And really, this is kind of very similar to the precept about false speech, but it's sort of taking on an understanding that my words have power. Right? What I say in the world affects others. So I should make an intention to only use my words, only use my speech for compassionate motivation, right? For compassionate means. When I say something, I want to make sure that I'm telling the truth. I'm speaking truthfully as much as I can, or as much as my ability allows me to, and that I'm using my words in a kind way. Right? I'm not using my words to cut anyone down, to insult anyone. I'm only using my words to help people, to lift people up, and I'm only using my words truthfully, as much as I can make sure that they are truthful. And then the next step, step 4, is really kind of the same idea, but it adapted to our actions. Right? So again, I accept that my actions in the world have power. Right? What I do is going to either help me to overcome suffering or is going to bring on more suffering in my life. So I want to use my action. I want to use my physical body, my physical actions in the world in order to help others. So I will only use my actions to further myself on the path towards clarity and towards overcoming suffering. And I will only use my actions compassionately. I will use my actions to help others in the world. And then this also oftentimes refers to following the 5 precepts, right? When I'm ready to, I take on the 5 precepts and I vow to follow them as much as I can in my life. The fifth one is right livelihood, and this is kind of an old-timey word. We don't use this word that much anymore, but your livelihood is your occupation. So in Buddhism, it matters what job you take, because you should not make your money, you should not make your living off of the suffering of others. So, in one sense, this sort of rules out some jobs, some occupations, like being a slaughterer, right? Somebody who kills animals for a living, a butcher, somebody who works with meat, works with the dead animals, dead bodies of animals. That's something that most Buddhists would say is not a good occupation because you are either inflicting suffering on other living beings or you're making your money off of the suffering of others. So your job, what you do every day, should not involve causing more suffering, right? Causing suffering to others, because that's just going to earn you lots of bad karma. It's going to hinder you on your path, so you should just avoid that. In another sense, it really means that whatever occupation you have, you should be doing it in a way that you are not causing suffering to others, and that you are doing it truthfully, and diligently. So any job that you have, you could approach that job honestly and trying to help other people, or you could, approach it selfishly or lazily, try to get away with as much as you can, an attitude like that. So whatever job you have, you want to do it well, right? You want to do it in the interest of others. You want to serve others in your job, and you want to do that job honestly and diligently. So that's your occupations, that has to do with your job. And then the next one is right effort, which really means that you are putting effort into making progress on your path every day. It's not something that you just do every once in a while. It's not something that you say, oh, okay, well, I worked on it for a while, but, now I have other things in my life that are kind of taking precedence, and then I'll get back to it at some point. No, to really progress on this path, you have to put in effort every single day, right? You have to work on this every single day, so that you are making progress in your path. So you have to have that right effort, really to move, to make significant progress towards enlightenment. The seventh one is right mindfulness, and this really means that with that effort should come a greater awareness, right? Mindfulness has to do with awareness, and mindfulness is something that many of you have probably heard of now, because it's becoming very popular in the West. There's lots of mindfulness classes. You can learn about mindfulness. Psychologists are studying the benefits of mindfulness, and really what mindfulness is it is being present and being attentive to the present moment, to what is going on around us at any given time. And in one sense, this goes back to the first noble truth about life is suffering. So remember, I talked about how we can tell that our life is never that satisfying because our minds are always wandering either to the future or to the past. This is what our minds tend to do when we don't learn how to control them. So with meditation, right, if I'm putting in that effort, right, and the hard work of this path is meditation, I learn how to control my mind. And I want to control my mind because I want it to rest in the present moment. I don't want it to just stray into the future or into the past at all times, which is what our mind naturally tends to do. So I want to teach it to stay in the present moment, to be attentive to the very moment in which I'm living. And that if I can learn how to do that, I will become aware of so much more than I was aware of before. Right? One of the ideas is that we miss so much of the world. We miss so much of what's going on because our thoughts are dragging us to the future or back to the past. Right? So if I can just rest here in this present moment, I will notice that there are so many wonderful things that I had no idea were going on. I will become grateful and overwhelmed by the joy and the beauty of this present moment, right? Instead of thinking, well, I can't wait until this video is over because then I can go do whatever it is that I want to do, later on. I should be grateful for this present moment, right? wow, right now you're sitting in your bedroom or you're sitting in whatever room you study in. I'm learning about Buddhism. I'm a college student. I'm taking a college course, and I'm learning about the different religions and philosophies of the world. Wow, that really is a privilege. There are so many people in this world who would love to be able to do that, who don't have the time, don't have the money, don't have the energy. So, this is really a wonderful thing. I should be grateful for this moment. Instead of just thinking, wow, is this video really, is it still going? She's still talking, right? Can't she just hurry up so that I can go do what I want to do more so? Then no, if we can reorient our minds to stay in the present moment, we can start to see the beauty, the joy, and the amazingness that is each and every present moment, and that will radically change our lives. It will radically change how we go through each day. Instead of just automatically jumping to the future or the past, I will learn to appreciate every single moment when I train my mind through meditation to stay in this moment, be absorbed in this very moment. And that life is completely different when we can do that. So this seventh step is a very crucial step, as you can see. It's learning to stay in the present moment, and then with that, we become more attentive to reality, right? This is when we start to wake up and we start to notice all of these little changes. So this is when we can start to see the truth of impermanence, the truth of no self, right? That when I can see the world for what it truly is, when I can see myself for what I truly am, I will notice that everything is constantly changing, right? Everything is alive. Everything is having these subtle and minute changes all the time. And it's when I think about them or have expectations about them that I cling to them and I want them to stay the same, instead of just observing that everything is constantly changing, and that's wonderful, right? So I don't want to cling to anything, because that's one, it's just silly, because nothing is going to stay the same. And also, it's sort of diminishing the wonder and the beauty of the world, that impermanence is just the nature of reality, so we should appreciate it, we should observe it and enjoy it. So this mindfulness is when we start to really wake up to reality, right? Wake up to the real nature of things, to impermanence, and then we start to see how we are causing our own suffering. So that's the seventh step, and it's really a very important one, of course. The idea is that all through these other steps, we are training our minds, we are learning how to control our minds so that we can make real progress in our mindfulness. And then the last step, right concentration, is really when you can rest in this awake or aware state. When we start to meditate, when we start to try to be absorbed in the present moment, to see the world for what it really is, the idea is that we can do that for kind of shining moments, right? For these little times in our life, through meditation, through actions like that, we can start to become more and more absorbed in the present moment. But for a very long time, it's fleeting. It really only lasts for a short period of time. And then we, because of our natural desire to become attached to things, to cling, we lose that mindfulness. So right concentration, being the last step in the Noble Eightfold Path, is when we can actually live in that awareness, when we can remain in that awareness, that understanding of the world. So that I'm not just waking up for a second and seeing, oh yeah, this is the world, this is reality. But I can actually live in that state. I can go through my life in that state. And that really is what becoming an enlightened being is, right? When I wake up to the true nature of reality and I stay awake. I don't get dragged back by my thoughts, dragged back by my clinging and my attachment. So that's how we overcome our attachments. That little by little we build up to gaining this awareness of the true nature of reality, being able to remain in the present moment, and seeing the true nature of impermanence, and therefore the true nature of our suffering, so that we can overcome it, right? And then this final step is when I can live without attachments. I can watch things come and go in my life, and I don't have to be happy at some things and sad at other things, The external nature of the world does not determine my mood. It does not determine my happiness or my sadness, because I know that everything changes. I know that everything is impermanent, including myself. So I can maintain this attitude of appreciation and joy and bliss despite any other external factors, despite anything else that happens in my life. It doesn't matter, right? Because I see that everything is impermanent. So I can remain blissful, I can remain joyful, no matter what else happens. So you can see the end goal of Buddhism is not that life is suffering. That's the beginning point. The end point is that life is perfect, life is joyful. But we have to see reality, we have to see life for what it truly is. And it takes a long time to get there. It takes a lot of hard work to find this concentration and to find this awareness of reality. Okay, so that's the Noble Eightfold Path. That's how we move towards enlightenment, towards achieving nirvana. And then we just have one more dimension, which is society.